Oh, my bad. What the heck? I'm so sorry.
Hello.
My bad. I'm still learning how to do this, y'all. Y'all gotta forgive me.
Are we we're not streaming, are we?
No, you know what it is? I think when it says broadcast that we're gonna go live, but I think that's separate from the broadcasting. I think I gotta press broadcast in order for us to even do the practice mode. So my bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
My video isn't on, is it?
Nope.
Why?
Can y'all hear? Is everybody?
I think it's just me and you on.
I see Zebulon and Shema.
Okay.
So hold on a second. Oh.
I don't know why my video isn't playing. Maybe I gotta leave the group and come back.
Okay. Oh, you know what? Hold on, my bad. Wait a minute. Okay, don't get off. Sorry.
Cello.
Hey,
Can you see me?
I can't see you now. I can just, cause I forgot I gotta promote everybody, the panelists. Okay, there we go. Hey, Zebulon.
Shalom, can you hear me?
Hey, say it again, Zebulon.
Can you hear me? You cannot hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Okay.
Why?
I'm in the kitchen.
Hey.
Oh well, as long as y'all can hear me.
Okay, so I see Brother Zeb.
Okay. I'm gonna try to go live to YouTube. Oh yeah, that's well.
Okay. Tamar, you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Zeb, you can hear me? I don't think Brother Zeb can hear me.
Oh, he said he was having a hard time trying to hear it.
Okay.
Yep.
Hello?
Yep.
I hear something. Is that Brother Shema?
Yep.
Yeah, he not on it. Let me see.
I am on.
I hear him.
We can't see your face though.
Sometimes in life, faces are not meant to be seen. Like yeah.
Okay. Oh my God.
Okay.
I'm trying, but I don't know what's going on, so I'm good with being black.
Oh, for real? You trying to tell? I'm like, what's going on, man?
Yeah, I had to exit out and come back in.
It's a conspiracy. Always a conspiracy.
We on YouTube or no?
I'm finna get on right now on YouTube right now.
Oh, okay.
So when it says recording,
that means recording. Even I'm in the wrong thing. My bad. Go ahead. My bad.
Yeah, it's recording, and we can actually share this to the page. I mean, we just never did.
Yeah. Once I hold on. Let me get out. I gotta get out of the thing on this one and get back on 1 second.
Shalom. Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's better.
Okay.
You look like a Chinese movie though. When the mouth moves.
The mouth moving, the words coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, your technique cannot see mine.
Is it too bright in here?
It's kind of dark.
You look like a church saint. Like the big bright light in the back of you.
Crazy, but
I feel like I'm about to meet by Jesus, brother.
Oh no!
That's funny.
Wow.
Okay. Shabbat shalom to everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Whole bottle of water on the floor.
Shalom.
Okay, why is it not? Okay, hold on. What? Oh.
Chief Zebulon.
And hallelujah. Shalom.
I sent you a text and told you I took your advice, man.
You know what? I actually saw the text, but I was getting bombarded with a whole bunch of other texts as well. So it was like I kind of got thrown off. I haven't even answered my mother's text, so I'm jacked up.
It's all good. I'm digging
my bad. I actually saw the text. I'm sorry.
I'm digging the kufi, the kefa.
Okay, it says that it takes 24 hours to activate the account for live streaming. So we're gonna have to just use Facebook. Because it's a new Gmail, you know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna get out of this and then try to go live through Facebook.
Back on Facebook.
Yeah, just this one time until we keep.
Yeah, we can always add it to YouTube, can't we? Like at a later date.
I tried to from the other ones and it didn't work. I don't know. I probably need to I've been moving around, so I need to sit still and figure it out, you know.
Right. And I can always help with that too.
Yeah, I tried to like download it and then upload it, and then it was taking forever. I was like, what? Well, hold on a second.
Okay. Whenever you get a chance, if you could, send it my way, and I'll try to play with it. Me and Sean, because that's how we do. Sean posted a few videos to our podcast or whatever back in the day. So I'm quite sure he might be able to help out with that.
Forget Sean. What do you know?
You guys, do I look sophisticated? This is my sophisticated sin.
No. Yeah, very Teddy Pendergrass, brother.
Oh.
All right, so we going live. So just give us a second.
Hey, watch this. My children gonna be mad at me, but hold on, y'all.
Okay, we live.
Let me mute myself. I was about to yell.
Is it working?
Yeah.
Are we live? Can somebody see something? Can y'all?
I see it says live on Facebook.
I'm about to go on Facebook and check now.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it just came through. Yeah, it's
okay.
Live on Facebook.
All right, we good. So I'm gonna share it to my page and whatnot.
It's shared to the LoveLanguage page first, correct?
I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Okay, so I gotta go there and share it on my page. How have everybody Shabbat been so far?
Cool.
No complaints over here.
Chilling. Like a villain.
On an island. That's the whole thing. Chilling like a villain on an island.
I heard that before.
I just went down. Everything is frozen on my side.
Oops. Okay. Hold on.
Wow.
Yeah, it's tripping.
So this is how we're gonna be live on Facebook.
That's fine. Forget technology. We just gonna go because this, you know.
All right.
All these pressing of the buttons. Ain't got time for that. Okay. Okay.
Fuck you.
Sorry. Who was that? Who was that?
Yeah, that was violent.
Dang, man. Hey, that was woo.
Yeah, at first I didn't know. At first I didn't even know what it was until I just saw him motion. I was like, wow, that was very violent, man.
Oh, man.
I always said I sneeze really violently. Like sometimes I hurt myself sneezing.
Yeah.
I ain't laughing at you. I'm sorry.
Okay. We can go ahead and get started. So welcome back, everybody. We're still trying to figure out this technological crap. When I was a kid, we had one button that did everything. Now there are too many buttons and they don't do anything.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Today's topic is managing conflict in intimate relationships, and we have been discussing various iterations of what that might look like, or various angles that you could look at that title as. And so I hope that we can get into it today. If you are listening online or you have comments, you can comment on the page, Love Language the Roundtable. And there's also a link in the event for the today's topic where you can also join the Zoom link and be on here live. You don't have to have your face if you don't want to have your face, but that's an option. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna go ahead and just read what we wrote about the topic. So it says conflict is inevitable in relationships, whether the disagreement stems from within the union or from outside sources. Learning to navigate these waves is of utmost importance if a relationship is to continue to thrive. So real broad conversation, but I hope that we can look at it in real life and discuss ways to to not let that be the last or the end of anybody's intimate relationship, whatever that means. So, okay. So I think the first thing. Oh, anybody have any opening thoughts before we jump into the conversation? You could talk about the weather or a funny joke you heard the other day that was so hilarious that you slapped your knees, rolled around the floor. No. Okay.
Zeb, you want to get the ball rolling?
That water show looked good. I will say that.
Yeah, I'm actually very thirsty right now. Because sometimes I get caught up in what I'm doing or typing or whatever, and then you kind of look up and you're like, you know what? I haven't had anything to drink in a couple of hours, and I haven't anything.
I understand. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I'm all over the place right now. But
man, I can't be seen, man.
Say it again.
Shema was saying that he can't be seen. He's having issues with the video.
Shema, you might have to jump out and jump back in. That's what worked for me. But while you do that, if that's what you choose to do, conflict. It happens in various different ways, especially with relationships of all levels. So when I think of it, the first thing I think of are issues that may arise, and how people choose to deal with them. Most of the time you find, is it hard to hear me?
No, I can hear you. I'm sorry. I was going to mute my mic because last time it was feedback on my end. I'm going to mute my mic. We can hear you though.
Okay. A lot of times, looking at it as issues, some conflict don't always have to be that though. It doesn't always have to be an issue or something going wrong. It could be the various of opinion or something like that. So, but I want to get everybody's take on it first. So I guess I'll go ahead and mute my mic.
What conflict, especially in conflict generally is it can be problematic, and sometimes it's not. Like you said, sometimes it's not really, sometimes conflict is just simply that. It's just ideas that conflict. Person has an idea, other person has an idea. They may not be on the same exact page, and of course, like Rakim once said, whatever goes against causes friction. It happens. I think the problem with conflict, especially conflict resolution, and I think this goes back to many of our previous discussions, when there's always the issue of the root of things. How did certain friendships or relationships or whatever the interaction is, how did these things begin? What was the foundation that was laid out from the very beginning? Because a lot of these, a lot of conflicts that we run across, they may not even be conflicts depending on what foundation was laid out in that particular relationship. So if certain guidelines, I think the brother Isaiah kind of mentioned this maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago on a particular discussion, that if there are no parameters that are laid out from the very beginning, then everything going forward is going to be chaos, because there's no rules, regulations, protocol, anything laid out. So I think one of the things, just to be kind of, I guess, just to jumpstart my end of the discussion, is you got to go back to as they say, you got to go back to the genesis. What rules and regulations were laid out just pertaining to how we deal with conflict? How do we deal with disagreements? Do we lay out a foundation of do we sweep things under the rug? Do we sweep it under the rug and act like it's not even an issue or whatever? Or do we argue? Do we sit down and reason? All of these things depend on how the foundation was laid out. I think that go back to what the brother started off with, some things are just not even worth not even worth the effort, because they may just be minute, in almost insignificant disagreements. But again, even that insignificant disagreement depends on those parameters that are laid out, because those insignificant disagreements, if there wasn't anything clear cut laid out in the beginning, these things snowball. And sometimes not even a snowball issue. Sometimes there's this underlying animosity sometimes between people that's not spoken of. It's kind of like lingering in the air, that constant friction. So even when something small comes up, a small thing, next thing you know, I'm at your throat, you're at my throat. And after the fact, you sit there thinking like, well, wait a minute. You sat here and had an argument over popcorn. Well, how the hell? It's popcorn. Why are we, how did it go from that to this? And then, of course, that's when you begin to realize, again, something transpired or something did not transpire in the genesis of the relationship, or the genesis of the friendship, the genesis of the business interaction or whatever. Something didn't transpire. Something wasn't laid out clear. So everything was kind of like left in the air. So now any type of conflict or disagreement, it goes from 0 to 100. There's no middle ground. There's no escalation. It's just boom, boom. And so even, and then sometimes you might have in a relationship or friendship or business association where there's plenty of groundwork that was laid out. So even when there are huge disagreements, the interaction is not huge itself. It's like, oh, it's a huge problem, but it ain't nothing. We'll handle it. Let's get in there and take care of it. It could be something huge. I give you an example, and some people may this example is not one of the most popular examples, depending on who we speak to about it. But consider the issue of adultery. Now I'm going to an extreme here, but think about with Bill Cosby and his alleged or actual scenarios with these other women. I don't know, whatever it was. But the one thing that's clear is that something happened. Now, whether it was consensual or not, whatever. But something happened. And whatever it was, we can be sure that there was some type of an adultery happening. But I always thought it was interesting how, with all of those scenarios, why did his wife Camille respond the way she responded to it? It's not, she didn't respond in a love and hip hop manner. There was no throwing bottles at anybody, whatever the case may be. Why does she remain somewhat level-headed? And I remember I think it was on Essence magazine. I was checking out an article online from Essence, and the question was actually posed to her, like, with all of these accusations, like, why haven't you, approached him on some whatever? And she said, and she left it very, very, put it out very bluntly and left it as that. She said, me and Bill have been married for decades. We understand each other, and that's it. Now, I mean, what do you actually make of that? It's, it's kind of like, okay. But after reading that, I said, well, that's a good point. Whatever the situation was, she understood what it was. He understood what it was. And so whatever the inner workings of that relationship was, she was clear on what it was and could deal with it in the manner that she dealt with it. She didn't lose her cool. She didn't wild out, whatever. It was like, okay, well, let's move forward. Now, my thinking is perhaps she just got used to it. Like, okay, yeah, he's gonna do him, whatever, and she just kind of like dismissed it. Or maybe she was doing things herself. Like, he's doing open marriage kind of situation. He's doing him, she's doing her. And whatever the case may be, the one thing that I learned from that article was that whatever they had from the very beginning, there was something established in the beginning of their relationship that allowed Bill whatever room to move the way he moved for decades, and she never upped and divorced him in the 70s when these things was really happening. When they were really, really popping, when he's just Quaaludes all over the place. You know what I'm saying? But but something in their relationship allowed her to say, well, it is what it is, and she dealt with it however she dealt with it. Of course, we're not privy to how they dealt with it, but the one thing that is clear is that however it was dealt with, it never ended, or it never concluded with a divorce. It never concluded with a separation of any kind. So I'm not trying to find the moral, or should I say the morale in what they're doing. My thing is only that in the beginning of a relationship or friendship, whatever, certain parameters are laid out very clearly. And now going forward, no matter what the situation is, these things can be dealt with. And obviously they were dealt with in a rational manner by the fact that we're here, that we're sitting here 50 years after the fact. And she's still going to bat for him. she still got his back, or whatever the case may be. So but it just gives me, it just gives me further understanding of what I was saying earlier, that when you lay things out, when these things are laid out clearly in the beginning, then of course, going forward, these issues can be dealt with, and they can be dealt with rational, even if it ends in a divorce or whatever, but there's at least a rational, a rational conflict resolution mechanism in place where it can be dealt with, and it's not dealt with her coming and shooting the guy, or him coming and shooting her, and whatever the case. So, I mean, again, I think it has a lot to do with the foundations, and the foundation will determine whether small issues become huge or whether huge issues become small. So that's just my off the top take on the situation. And I'll mute right now.
Well, for me, I'm gonna keep it real simple like this. Check it. Let me get on my Isaiah. As an insider for those that's listening. Anyway, with the conflict, I think it has to do with, or it can be managed with what these two brothers brought out and said. And we've been speaking about this too for a while now. But I think things need to be put in place. Scenarios should be brought out. A lot of conversation in the beginning. I mean, even if y'all just sitting there watching TV together and you see a scenario on there, like, oh, how would you handle this? How would you want to handle this if this was to happen to us? Should we, if we have some type of problem in person, not in person, but in public or something, how will we handle that? Will we allow that to change our composure, or how, like he was bringing out with, like Chief J. Blunt was bringing out with Cosby wife, maybe it's something they talked about. I think that should be something that most couples should do, because some people don't know how to. And then when you're speaking on these things, you have to talk to each other and tell each other, hey, let's be boldly or honest with our answers too. Because if we have a weak, like you might have somebody that don't know how to control themselves in public.
Good point.
What can we do to help both of us be close in proximity as far as with that type of self-control? Let's deal with each other a little more and take smaller steps into public events. Not to say we're going to get into it when we go out, but I'm just saying let's get used to doing these things. Maybe this person is not. So it's all dealing with, I believe, communication. I believe scenarios. Like I'm about to do the same thing Morel Zerlan just did. I'm about to bring another situation in. Let's talk about cops and how they kill innocent bystanders. What the heck are you talking about, Shema? I'm about to tell you. I went to a class, and this class for my FOI card and my concealed carry and stuff, the person that was giving it, he told us that, he was a cop. And he said when he was a cop, most of those cops did not go to the range. Most of those cops did not go into practice real life scenarios. Why is that important? What am I talking about? Because if you practice these things, just like when you practice Torah, and you continue to practice if you're an NBA player, you continue to practice if you're an athlete, is to be able to handle yourself in these situations. If you're not practicing it, if you're not being aware of it, if you're not doing these things, how can you possibly do it when the scenario pops up? How? It's not possible. I don't care who you think you are. You have to actually practice these things. Well, it's never happened to me. Yeah, it's never happened, but how would you react if it does? How? It's many things that I have not experienced yet, and I know others that have not, but they are literally practicing it just in case it does. So that's my that's my little opener, I guess, as to what I think can help these conflicts that will take place be overcome.
Good point.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was trying to find the unmute button. Yeah, I think a lot of the points that was brought out so far are excellent. Looking at it from a solution standpoint and just avoiding not being able to manage something, because I think we already said conflict is inevitable. I mean, it's going to happen whether you are in an intimate relationship as far as male and female, or even parent to child. Like you're going to have, or coworker to coworker, stuff is going to come up. So I guess the first thing to consider is, what is conflict? Like what is conflict? Because that would be a good definition to discuss. If somebody has it up, we can talk about it.
That is anything that can be looked at that makes you uncomfortable. I just put a post up this morning about that. I don't know if y'all saw it. It said something about uncomfortable. I forgot what I said, man. I'll be posting stuff that pops in my head sometimes. But I said, where is it at? Oh, okay. I said, I'm starting to see a pattern with us. A lot of grown people will react as a child. The moment there's something we don't like, that can cause conflict right there, or agree with, that can cause conflict, or a moment of uncomfortableness. That is really when conflict comes in for a certain individual. If they're uncomfortable, then that's when they start to they're going to react or act on it, or whether it be a physical thing, whether it be a silent thing, whether it be a resenting thing. It's from when uncomfortable moments happen. I believe that's what conflict arises with individuals. But I didn't read my whole post, but I just wanted to point that out, y'all.
Indeed. It kind of, it kind of reminds me of scenarios that occurred, like, and I know it occurs with probably everybody, but I know in my childhood, but now as an adult looking back, I realized that one of the biggest disservices that that my mother did for me, and I love my mom, and she was a young mother. She had me at 14, so she did the best she could with what she had. So I never take anything obviously away from her on those issues. But one of the things that I think that she did and taught me, real young, that was a great disservice to me, was to avoid conflict. And this goes back to what Shama was just saying, that when you avoid things, what ends up happening is that now you lack the fortitude to deal with them going forward, because you've never been in a situation where you had to do certain things. So it's like the example that he gave with the gun. If you've never been at a shooting range, if you've never been in any type of practice scenarios, when the real scenario happens, you're gonna fold. You're gonna be a failure. And this is in anything that you deal with in life. You're gonna fail. And what my mother did with me, and I guess maybe because I was her firstborn, and how mothers are with firstborns, and as a son, how that's gonna happen. She babied me. She coddled me. She, like my uncles used to say, she was making me into a sissy. It was what it was. And now, of course, as an adult, I can look back at that and say, yeah, that's exactly what was happening. Whatever like that. If I fall on the ground, oh, my boy, oh, and rubbing my knee, and making a big thing over me just scraping my knee and things like that. So, but she was real big on sweeping things under the rug. If something occurs, these things weren't talked about. There was no type of discussions and things. It was like, hey, sweep it under the rug, and pretend like it never happened. And who knows why she thought that. Maybe these things came from maybe in her childhood, certain things that I don't know, but these concepts that she placed in my mind from very young, when I got into my teenage years, I was like almost, I was almost like neurotic with my avoidance of conflict. Like I was one of those, 13, 14-year-olds that I didn't want no parts of arguments, because I'm figuring like, I don't want to argue, because if I argue, it's probably going to end up into a fight, and I don't want to fight nobody because I don't want to get punched in the face. I had like a fear of being punched in the face. Like that might have been the end of my life if somebody popped my jaw. So there was always this, apprehension of getting into anything, any type of conflict of anything. And what ends up happening as a result of that is you begin to learn another lesson. And that lesson is what I call unnecessary concessions. Unnecessary compromising, where you concede and compromise just to say, okay, just because I don't want to have any problems. I just don't want to have any issues. And that becomes a spiraling situation, because now if it's not checked, when you get older, anybody can run over you. Not because they're stronger than you, not because they're more smart or whatever. It's because you just simply don't want the problems. And what she didn't realize, and fortunately, because of how certain turns that my life took as I got a little bit older, it took me out of that, environment of constant concessions. I got put into situations where now it was either you're going to be a man or you're going to be a punk. Take your pick. And fortunately, as I got older, I took the man route and became more aggressive in dealing with, with certain conflicts or whatever, and saying, hey, listen, what's the worst that's going to happen? What's worst case scenario here? And you get past the fear. And I think that a lot of times that if we don't have that practice, if we don't, like Brother Shema said, if we don't have that practice or be in environments in which conflict resolution is constantly being laid out for us and being made to indulge in, even if it's a mock situation, it doesn't have to be a real conflict, but just mock scenarios to get you more familiar and comfortable with these type of scenarios. If we don't go through that, when it really counts in relationships, it's going to be a massive failure. And I'm glad that, again, my mom, she did the best that she could with what she understood, but the way that she was leading me, by the time I was like 13, 14, 15 years old, I didn't want no parts of nothing. If I even thought you were going to argue with me, no problem. Concessions all over the place. And of course, when you're a teenager, that's kind of shaky. When you become an adult, that's horrendous. So I just wanted to bring that out, that just in agreement with what was said previously, that if we're not in scenarios or given platforms to where we can freely voice our disagreements or voice our concerns over situations, we begin to develop this shell around us to the point where when situations require a response or require that you step to a situation, we start kind of pussyfooting. And male or female, that's not good for a person's soul. It literally slowly breaks your soul, because you're like, wow, as a man, you don't feel like a man, and as a woman, you don't feel like a woman.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. You shared that testimony about your upbringing, because I feel like it was the same thing in my family. I was my father was was real laid back, and even it's still the same thing to this day. My family is kind of laid back, but my grandma was the only one that was like hot-headed in the house, cuss people out, blah blah. So my initial example of a female voice was very like aggressive, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, I don't want to be like that. So I kind of learned it. I don't think it was taught to me, but I'm like explicitly taught to me, but I think I was in an environment where I was like, I can't be that. And there was no middle ground on how to express myself. So my father, like I said, my father was relatively laid back or whatever, chill, and then she was rah rah rah. So I didn't learn it, but I do agree that it stifles. Well, I think culturally, at least in this country, I can only speak about so-called African Americans in this country. We learn both ends of the spectrum. I don't think we have ever learned how to peacefully have a conversation without somebody cussing somebody out or somebody under the influence or something crazy going on. So we are kind of raised in environments that are toxic to begin with. So it does stifle the voice, because I believe, and I've learned, that conflict is good. But that took decades of like learning. And I will say, I agree with you. The negative aspect of that is that when you don't say how you feel, the feelings don't necessarily go away. They actually get worse, because all you are doing is trying to suffocate a monster. It's still a monster down there growing. You know what I'm saying? That's and you're like, well, it's cool. And then I often think about this, because we're told not to lie, right? The Torah is explicit about being dishonest. You know what I'm saying? And being against that. But then we are dishonest to ourselves. And so how does that even match up? We say, thou shalt not lie, but then if you lie to yourself, if somebody says to you, if a situation comes up, for example, and you are having a conversation with your spouse or whatever, and they say they feel a certain kind of way about something, but you feel strongly the opposite way, and you don't feel empowered to say something to them, you have just agreed that your voice is irrelevant, and that's not going to work either. You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot to be hashed out, but I think it's true that if we have a foundation in the beginning on how to handle conflict, and like Shema said, have a little you don't want to make up little fights, try to have like a little fake fight and see how they respond. Right. but to be put in situations, on the flip side, to be put in situations that even test how you deal with conflict is good too, because that is a major turnoff. If a man is quick to anger, that is a huge turnoff. But I learned that by being with really abusive people, you know what I'm saying? So so instead of going through all of that, being clear up front and being confident in your voice and letting that be the standard, so that if something does happen, like you said, Zebulon, something big happens, you can already set the stage for how you're going to deal with conflict, period, so that it's not off the table, that it's expected, that you are in full reality. And then also conflict I think is good too. I think it promotes growth as well. So it's not a bad thing. It's just it's just management and being given the opportunity to practice it, like Shema said, in real life. So that's all I want to say.
Actual fact.
That is real factual. You guys both all three of you rather, touched on some really interesting things. Hold on, I'm sorry. Touched on some interesting things, and I kind of link it to the of a few episodes ago, we talked about looking at getting into relationships. Talked about getting into relationships and looking at it as an interviewing process. And during interviews, a lot of times they ask about.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry about that.
Crazy bus.
You keep us on our toes, Isaiah. You keep us on our toes. You go Barry White on us, you know what I'm saying, with a little bit of Teddy Pendergrass or whatever. And now you got little the Toto coming on in the video.
Little Toto.
Come on, Coco. Come on, make your camera.
Okay.
Coco, Toto, same thing.
All right. So wasn't my ideal for a name? Oh, don't look at me like that. So back to what I was saying. Yo, this is an interesting show. Back to what I was saying. You guys touched on a lot of interesting points. Growing up, it was kind of the opposite for me. I was predominantly raised by my mother. We touched on that in other episodes, but oh shoot, I lost my point. Okay, let's get this back on the rails. All right, so we talked about culture, and one of the biggest questions in interviews is how do you fit that culture? Brother Zeb, you made mention to that, I feel, with being set up with these moments to kind of see or having that conversation of how you interact in these environments, in this situation, and people making a big deal out of little stuff. And you brought up the situation with Bill and his escapades, and the fact that she stuck by him because she said she knew him. That's understanding that culture, that cultural aspect of that relationship. And I don't think a lot of relationships, especially nowadays, focus in on that. They kind of have preconceived thoughts, expectations, but they don't build into the culture that create a scenario for those expectations or, thoughts to kind of mature and become embraced. So a lot of times the ideal or what creates the conflict is the ideal of the relationship doesn't necessarily match what the relationship actually is. And it's kind of a
absolutely
on effect. Growing up, you guys touched on dealing with conflict. Growing up, my mother was known for being very aggressive. Whether it's due to the environment that I grew up in, that she lived in at the time, or anything else, she was known for being quick to the punch. So as in Zeb, how you said you kind of shied away from that, doing to the excessive amount of nurturing you were given.
Right.
It was kind of, whereas initially I tried to shy away from that. It was kind of instilled in me at a young age. You better get out there and throw them hands, or don't come running back up in this house because that's not allowed. So my mother even posed the fact that she would beat me up if I didn't go outside and handle my business. So growing up, I had to kind of retract from that aggressive behavior and try to find what that balance was. So I see on everybody's kind of account to entering into life and maturing, it's either one way or the other, trying to find what that balance is to kind of make everything level off. Whereas in some cases there was less aggression, and more aggression was kind of needed in other cases where less aggression or aggression needed to be removed from the table. Because even coming into this truth, as I said it many times, with certain friends and family members and relationships, I kind of put people in headlocks and like, y'all gonna come and get this thing. Whereas that's not how Christ acted. That's not how any of the patriarchs in the Old Testament acted. There was that balance that they had. Even when Moses, when dealing with the people, you know what I mean? Dealing with Israel in the wilderness, he had to get them both aspects. So it's good that y'all made mention of that, and understanding the culture is a good way of finding out what those conflicts are going to be and how to avoid them. I like the brother Shamar's his definition of what a conflict is, because it could be anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. It doesn't always have to be a negative light or positive, but being uncomfortable can sometimes produce some really positive manners of growth and understanding about yourself that you never even had before. So I can give a personal reflection on that. The first time I lost my job, and not being able to find work after that for a good moment, I was put, well, not the first time, correction. That wasn't the first time I lost my job. That was the second time I was laid off. But anyway, first or second. The point was I had to kind of grow in that. I didn't know what to do. I was slowly slipping into a state of unhappiness because I couldn't find a gig, and
Right.
things wasn't working out. And my grandmother, who's very patient, even started to be like, well, you need to go and do something. And I'm like, well, I can't force these jobs to hire me. Whatever it is, I'm not finding the right niche.
Right.
Lo and behold, I wound up finding work again. But at the same time, I made that decision to go to school or go back to school. And it was kind of a transitioning phase, but within that, I was able to find out some things about myself and even some passions that I didn't even know I really had until having a conversation with another brother. Shout out to Josh from DC. If he ever gets a chance to look, I had to throw a shout out to him. But we were talking about some things that we kind of wanted to do and things that we wanted to see change within the community. And when you don't see that change, sometimes that means it's better suited for you to go ahead and do the work. And I wouldn't have did that without that growth kind of entering in or finding out what that conflict was, and going ahead and making reverence to it and finding out a way to change it. So I'm gonna keep it real short because I know I'm getting long-winded, but in a relationship, it's kind of doing the same thing, in that initial conversation or that communication to say, well, this is where we having our problem, or this is what that problem is, and trying to lay out what both parties feel would be a solution individually, and coming together collectively to decide that or make that determining factor of what would be that that next step, not removing a voice from anybody. Because Tamar, as you stated, you had to kind of find out the best way to kind of throw your voice in there, and
right,
you know, let it be heard without necessarily being overly aggressive or underly
Underly.
yeah, we understand that ain't a word. Okay, we know, are being undermined. Can I say that? Can I say that instead of underly? Is that better? Instead of being undermined. So
right. I got you.
looking at that balance is important as a nucleus, our relationship, to kind of try to paint that. And I think we learn that as we learn ourselves and our partners. But this is something new that I'm kind of tackling within the relationships, and it's coming to the table understanding that there's 3 factors to the relationship, which is yourself, that other person, in your relationship itself, which should kind of be looked at as in their own, that they're all 3 separate compartments but operating together. So I'm just gonna throw that on the table and I'm gonna mute.
Shema, did you want to say something? Jump in. You still there? You're not still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I just had to take care of some things with my
Oh, my
children.
bad. Okay.
Had to, you know what I'm saying, lay down that rod. No, I'm playing. But I heard bits and pieces, but I'm going to let you go ahead so I can kind of like bring the context together and let y'all finish it and bring the context of what he was saying together.
Okay. So I had some thoughts. I wanted us to discuss a little more, because I keep hearing about I know a few weeks ago we talked about toxic masculinity, but I wanted to talk about the idea of masculinity and femininity in the context of conflict. Because like you said, Zebulon, you was taught one thing by your mom, but then you was like, "No, I'm gonna be a man, right, and handle your business." And I think Isaiah used similar language. So I'm just curious about what does conflict look like from the perspective of masculinity. Like, you know, are there boundaries to it? I mean, I don't know. I speak from a woman's standpoint because I'm a lady, but I wonder with y'all, with masculinity, like, what are the boundaries of masculinity when dealing with conflict? Because, you know, you can either be perceived as a punk or toxic. Yeah.
Ooh, y'all brothers mind if I chime in on this first?
Shoot.
All right. Man, this is a beautiful question. Thanks for throwing it out there, Tamar. Because as we talked in that toxic masculinity show, which to me I feel as though is one of our best ones. I really like the conversation there. But we understand that the aspect of masculinity and femininity ain't nothing wrong with it. And there are aspects that are portrayed in both man and woman. You know what I mean? It's just a kind of to look at it as the toxic portion comes in when there's an overflow of one attribute, right? And it stifles the voice of the other person or people within that organization. So relationship, whatever you want to put. So when I look at this question as far as conflict, it's like, oh, so now we're placing gender roles or ideals culturally onto how to solve a problem, and that's dope. I think like as Tamar's put it, you know, if you handle things one way, you're considered the punk. I think that even that aspect alone is not saying that that's what you were saying, but you know, even that aspect alone is kind of like a toxic view on things. Because whereas, and I've been in certain situations where not even me. I'm going to bring up a good movie, which is one of my favorites, The Color Purple, right? So
that movie.
Yeah.
No, it's because it's just so many layers into that movie.
There's a lot of layers in that movie.
Yeah.
But Silly is in Silly, you know how to say her name. She's in the daggone field, you know what I mean? And was it Sophia came up to her and was like, no. Harpo came up to her and was like, she won't listen to me or whatever. And her natural instinct was to beat her. You know what I mean? And it's said so bluntly, and it's like, well, that's what you do. That's how you handle conflict. Now, I've been in certain circles where, the natural instinct is, oh, well, shut her down, or, let her know what it is, or, you tell her the way it's supposed to be told. And it's like, is that necessarily going to fix the situation? Or is that just me pushing my dominance over the situation? And that's kind of that line that I was just talking about. We all kind of mentioned here that we kind of tiptoe. So when looking at the aspect of being a male, or my aspect, let's make this clear, my aspect, or my opinion of being a male within a relationship is trying to find that balance to operate in a sense where I'm not being overly dominant, but I'm also allowing everybody to have a voice. So removing the aspect of toxicness out of it while still keeping my quote unquote manhood intact. Because a lot of times you talk to people and you say, well, I chose to do things this way, or, I'm not going to yell about it, or kick and fuss, or, I'm not going to beat her, which, I've seen that offered to suggest how to fix a situation before as well.
Right.
Like, well, dang, is that what it means? Is that what's considered, to be a man? And my natural mind, the answer would be no, emphatically.
Right, and yeah, and very good points, Aki. And I'm glad that Sister Tamar kind of brought that out, because obviously there needs to be some there needs to be a little bit of clarity on this, whatever. Because I know when I made that statement about, hey, you're gonna be a punk or you're gonna be a man, or whatever like that. That it has to be, that there's certain elements to that has to be quantified. That has to, there's certain caveats that have to be kind of brought in order to to give it some type of clarity. And the funny thing is that, just going back to my mother, she was the way she was with me, but the funny thing was that her father, my grandfather, he was an ultra man. He was machismo. I mean, he was, and the thing was that he was very soft with his daughters, like kind of like, hey, these my girls, whatever. But to his sons, because I think when he had 3 daughters and 5 sons. So his thing was, yeah, my daughters, yeah. But when it came to his sons, his thing was, listen, boy, you're gonna be a man. You're gonna be a damn sissy. You're not gonna walk around here with the light voice, put some bass in your voice. And he was, ultra, masculine on that level. And of course, as I got older, certain things that I learned from my mother, how she used to, explain how he acted and how he was with his wife. And as I got older, I was able to put a lot of these things in perspective. How she was raising me, how my grandmother on my father's side, because she had me for a while, and she was one of those same way. She's old school, where, listen, you don't let your age fool you. You're a man, and you're gonna be a man. Talk like a man, whatever like that. She was ultra. It's funny. She was instilling in me masculinity, whatever, from a young age. Like, no, you will be a man. And again, she's from the South, from a very older times where men were men, women were women, and you didn't confuse the two. Like today,
right. There was no in between.
Right. So, but I think this is where the toxic element comes in, because it's just like water. Water, if given in the right amounts, can preserve life. Too little water will kill you. Too much water will kill you. So but it's water. This is the life fluid, you know. So even in even in situations that are, you know, that are good, there could be some type of there could be toxic. There could be some toxic elements that can come from good situations if it's not dealt with in a certain balance. Going back to what Isaiah was what he was laying out, and so I think, you know, and there was a point that I was going to make when he was speaking about it, but what was it? Yeah, that we're dealing with you know, with balance, you know, there's a thin line, because number one, when you talk to women, and I'm talking about women, you know, women like, or they love a masculine man. Women are not turned on by feminine acting males. Now, they might look at them like, oh, okay, you know, he's whatever, but she's like, listen, I've seen scenarios where you get women will tell a man, like, oh, grow a set. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, like why? Like, put some bass in your, like, what's wrong with you? Whatever. Put some bass in your voice or whatever. And because as much as women like certain levels of, you know, of males or whatever being somewhat docile in certain elements, there's a nature, I think, with women who they don't want a feminine acting. And when I say feminine, I don't mean gay or nothing like that, just being that energy, that feminine energy. Women don't like that. They're like, dude, like I'm the one with the skirt here. Like, what are you doing? You know? And same thing with men. Men, while they like a calm, soft voice woman, that femininity, they love that. But no man wants a woman on both spectrums. They don't want the masculine acting woman, and they don't want the ultra feminine acting woman. Like, you know, who can I give an example of? Like, remember on All in the Family, Edith Bunker. No man wants somebody that's like, oh, Archie. Everything is so, and you're like, oh, please. Like that's far beyond. And again, dealing with the extremes.
Right.
A man doesn't want want a woman who's so extremely feminine to where it's annoying, like Sally Struthers annoying. And they don't want a masculine acting woman, because it's like, oh, okay, am I in a homosexual relationship here? Because like, I'm masculine, you're masculine. This is not right. This is not good energy. And I think, and again, it's the same thing with women. Women don't want, you know, they don't want no ultra type of man all the time, because it's like, damn, are you a man or are you a beast? But they don't. But then they don't want, you know. But a woman doesn't want a man who is ultra, you know, sensitive on the other end of the spectrum. So you know, women love masculine men who understands that they have to control that energy, just like with anything, with electricity. Electricity, if you don't have the right plugs or whatever like that, electricity can kill you. So you have to be able to harness it. Femininity has to be harnessed. If you don't harness femininity, it becomes toxic. If you don't harness the masculinity, that also can become toxic. So it really just goes back to, do you have a conductor? Do you have something that can harness and protect that energy from going out and destroying?
Man, look, I got something to say. Today's society sucks. I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. What the brother was saying, and yeah, I know you can't see me, and I know you're looking at me like, man, what is he about to say? But I'm about to say it. What he's saying has great validation, right? But right now, the reason I say it doesn't, I'm about to be devil advocate right now, is because today's society sucks. What he's saying, I'm going to repeat that, is valid. Ain't no and, ifs, or buts. But what he's saying right now is invalid because today's society sucks. I'm going to tell you what I mean. You have women that want the masculine out of the brother, right? And if you have one that really is operating in that light, the proper way, since today's society sucks, the women don't really know how to identify a real masculine man who has balance, though. I'm gonna give you another example. You have women that'll want a brother that's more, I'm just gonna say balanced, but I'm gonna say softer right now. Because I mean, us three brothers, I don't think we look at each other and saying, okay, we soft. But when I say softer, I mean just balanced, don't just go ham on everything. And, they want that. But then as soon as the brother, if he's like, say if he's calm and chill, he's stern, but he's calm and chill. But the moment he's addressing the issue, then now this man is feminine. It's so many dynamic ways of looking at this. I've came to the conclusion that we got to figure out a way to teach people what these things really are. So I wasn't discrediting what Moray, Chief Zebulon was saying. I think it's very valid. But the problem with it is we don't know what it is. The women today do not know what it is. The men today don't know what it is. And I'm saying it because I feel myself, I'm going to use me as an example. I feel I am very balanced. I feel I know when to be, you know what they say, pick your battles, whatever. I feel like I know when to do it. And, I've been told, this is what I've been told about women. I'm telling y'all I'm being, you calm, I like your energy, this and that, blah, blah, blah. Right? But recently, the one I was telling Tamar about and Isaiah about, I think I told you I was courting somebody in January or whatever it was. This woman, you all so great, you all this and that, blah, blah, blah. But the moment I express issues, not in a bad way, in a I believe a great way. When she didn't get the response she wanted, that's what she called me, feminine. You got feminine energy. But then watch this. I see your face, Tamar, but watch this. 2 months later, she come back crawling, crying, and apologizing because she went elsewhere, I guess, and ran into 2 other cats and saw the way I was operating. It wasn't because I had feminine energy. Because, man, I'll put somebody's head through the ground if I really want to. Trust me. But look at did y'all see Isaiah's face? I'm just saying, I think our perspective of what feminine energy and masculine energy is not valid. I feel like what we're speaking, what Zebulon is saying is right, but I'm saying as far as society is concerned, we don't really know what's feminine energy. If you got a guy that's chill, okay, think of a Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson is one of the coolest, calmest coaches that we've seen. I mean, I don't know if y'all agree, but I feel like he knew how to approach his team when he needed to. Hey, Scotty, or Mike, get here. He know when to operate as such, and they was very successful. But what I'm saying is, say that again, bro.
He called that the Zen mode.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, now I'm starting to rant now because I think I'm not getting my point across the way I really want to. Long story short, what the brother said before me is facts, in my opinion. But the problem is today's society does not operate on facts no more. We operate on perception, emotion, and ignorant, self-defined definitions. And that's all I got. But to answer her question, she said the expectation for having conflict when it comes to masculine and feminine. I don't know. I'm just going to say I don't know the answer to it. I ain't about to sit up here and try to give you the answer, Tamar. I don't know because today's society sucks.
Hey, I'm sorry. Did I cut you off, brother?
Yeah, no, you good. It's just, that's it, y'all.
I got a compound question that we can even circle back on Tamar's question. I'm sorry, is it too loud? I know.
But before you do a compound question, I wanted to respond to the feminine aspect. Unless this is gonna I don't want to jump in. I just wanted to.
Nah, you cool.
I want to add some balance. I'm on here with a bunch of dudes. Okay.
Yeah. I feel it because once you state your point, once you state your point from that other aspect, we can double back. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So yeah, so I definitely agree with Shema. I do think that there's no understanding on any of that. I mean, if you have what I learned yesterday, which is the continuing understanding of the gender, whatever the spectrum is, if that continues to like evolve, air quote evolve and change, then of course the idea of femininity and masculinity is going to be the same way with people who are straight. So, but I do agree that people don't understand what it is. I think that we discussed this before. A lot of our family, our nuclear household is not traditional male female. Like I just said with me, my mom was around, but she went with my father. So it was me and my grandma. Then Isaiah, you have your mother and your father wasn't around. They wasn't together, put it like that. But so you had you learn things. The same thing with you, Zebulon. Like you had your mama. Not sure what your father's situation is, but we all have grown in environments that are predominantly feminine. So whether we are female or male, we still are learning from predominantly feminine aspects. And then when we see masculinity, for the most part, I'm just stereotyping. It's really aggressive. It's absent. It's very non-emotional. It's more or less I'm taking care of you in a physical way, so I'm going to provide, pay for bills, you know what I'm saying? Things that are not necessarily nurturing to your soul. So we have this imbalanced period that we learn from TV, from the government, from the strangers, people that are not Black people. And we continue to talk about how we learn from other cultures. I will say on a feminine aspect, and I can only speak for myself, I can't speak for every woman. I do agree. It is it is annoying if I was to be all like, I'm a damsel in distress, somebody help me. Ain't nobody gonna be like, hey girl, let me come help you. Ain't nobody dealing with that. Or if I was extra on the flip side, we talking about conflict, if I was extra emotional all the time. Ain't nobody gonna deal with no woman that's constantly like everything she's snapping off on. And I think that's kind of what we were talking about in the inbox. That was at least the assumption I came across when reading the ideas for this topic is about, causing a scene. That is a specifically feminine characteristics. I'm saying air quote feminine. So if you say for me, if I was married or whatever, or not married, if I had an interest in a guy and he was showing me that he was extra emotional, I'd be like, you acting like a female. And we say that all the time. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that just even our language defines what's masculine and what's feminine. And so it is a balance. I think that's what I heard ultimately is that there is whether you're a male or female, there has to be a balance even within your idea of masculinity and femininity, because then you could go too far off the top and be whatever, or so it has to be a middle ground. And so I do think we need to unlearn and relearn what masculinity is. Because if you just look at the book, David is like my favorite ancestor, like forefather, whatever you want to call him. And I think it's because he showed he was a human being. I mean, he showed his vulnerabilities. He was extra crunk when he got time to go to war. But he even
talking about David?
Yeah, David.
Talking about David?
David.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
He knew when it was time to get crunk, and he knew when it was time to back off. I mean, he didn't kill Saul. He could have killed Saul. He was able to be calmed down by the feminine energy that was Abigail. You know what I'm saying? So he's like the perfect. And this is gonna sound real carnal, but apparently he was attractive, okay? Because they was out there making songs. They was like, Saul killed his thousands, but David killed his 10,000. Okay? So he was definitely attractive. I think he's a good.
Wait. Stop. How he attractive because he killed 10,000 people?
No, I think the assumption. They say he was they say his countenance was fair when they was describing him. I think when
messing with you, Taylor. I'm messing with you, Taylor.
Oh, well, I was just trying to clarify because I didn't want that to be the thing that went out.
Well, first of all, he was an Israelite, so Israelite attractive. It's kind of a given. Israelite women, beautiful. Okay. Israelite men, whatever. It's kind of a given. It's like it kind of goes hand in hand. It's like
exactly.
You know what I loved about Dawi though? This is the one thing that stuck out to me out of everything. Well, two things actually. He knew. It's two things that stuck out. Okay, one was it was Samuel, right? Wasn't it Samuel that came? Okay.
Yeah.
So when he was describing the scenario, listen, but see, Samuel was smart. This is what I think we can learn from both. If we are getting into an altercation with someone or whatever, sometimes we got to have them realize outside of you. So Samuel did that with Dawid, and Dawid saw what was happening. He was like, yeah, that's not right. But then when he realized it was him, the man repented quickly. You know what I'm saying? That was one thing that we learned from him. This can actually go with the conflicts we got, but he repented from that. The second thing that you look like I lost you, Tamar. Tell me if I lost you. Bring me that. Not lost you. I mean, like, am I saying something wrong?
No, I'm listening.
Okay, good. Okay, the second thing is when that one time when that guy came out yelling at him. I brought this up on the show a few times, I think, but I love it. He came out. You always say the name, too. I can't think of his name, but you brought it back out. Came out there and called him all types of names, all that stuff, and his man was ready to kill him.
Yeah.
And Dawid said, no, let him do basically what he's doing. How many of us brothers and sisters could be on that, man? We go through Facebook nowadays. Even if we wrong, we still right. You know what I'm saying? That's another conflict thing right there that we can apply either outside of man and woman, but more so we talking about man and woman right now. But I think that's a universal example, a universal scenario that we could use.
Right.
Since you brought Dawid up.
Right.
What's interesting though, the fact that when with Sister Tamar bringing up Dawid and showing how you can these things can be seen, like his example, how he's on one hand he's but think about it as in touch in these areas as he was. Think about one of the lasting statements that he left with his son Solomon. Prime example of the balance. He said what? He said, hey, you're gonna show yourself as a man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm out of here. I'm about to
He showed this as him.
yeah, I'm on my way to the Jerusalem above. Which is free.
Right.
I'm on my way here. So he tells his son, he says, show yourself as a man. Not because it was a massive like a ooga booga kind of situation, but to say, hey, listen, look what you're about to inherit. You're about to inherit a kingdom and a heritage that is going to be troublesome. There's going to be some great elements to it, but there's going to be a lot of troublesome elements to it, and that there has to be a balance. I mean, first of all, remember Solomon's first name. Remember his birth name isn't Solomon.
Yeah.
It's Yedidiah.
I didn't even think about that.
Which is interesting because it's actually a feminine name. It's Yedidiah in Hebrew. It's a female name actually. So sometimes it makes you wonder, like, okay, was the name Shlomo given to him to kind of balance it? I don't know. That's that could be just wild conjecture, but I think that what's important again, like what you bringing up Dawid, he's a classic example of someone who was in tune with these, with one side of of his nature, his elements, but you never confuse that with being soft because
right,
because he'll lay you out as well. And so
right.
But there was a balance, So it just kind of goes back to
I'm the modern day Dawid, Aki, and I hope I'm the modern.
I just think that balance. I don't know if you guys have seen this show, and I'm going to make this point real brief so that brother Isaiah can get back to his to the questions that he was going to pose. But I don't know if you've seen this show. It's on Netflix called Snowfall.
I don't think so.
It's just a real briefly. It's like a documentary type series. It's a series, but it's dealing with the rise of crack in LA.
Oh wow!
During the 80s, and all of the ramifications of that situation, of how it destroyed families and things of that nature. Excellent show. But there's a character in the show named Leon, and he's the uncle of the protagonist. The central character's name is Franklin. He's the one who ultimately starts to kind of get into the drugs. Everybody before that was into selling weed, and then he kind of got turned on to this thing of, hey, if you take the cocaine and you cook it this way, it can create this. And it blew his mind, like, whatever. So he got into that, and he brought his uncle into it. His uncle was the weed dealer, but that's beside the point. His uncle Leon his character was a funny one, because when every situation he was ultra masculine. So it could be a situation like I don't know, his breakfast didn't have toast, and his thing would be like, hey, where's my toast? Get my toast on this plate. Like, everything was ultra. But then when he was talking to his woman in a scenario that, it was one of those, kind of like sentimental kind of scenarios where he's trying to console her on something, all of a sudden this ultra masculine character that you've seen throughout the entire show, now he's talking to her like, hey, listen, baby, I understand what you're going through. And it was so weird. I'm laughing at the situation because I've never seen him talk like that. Everything is ultra. And it just reminded me of the balance that, that there's times where you have to be ultra. Like Proverbs says, that there's like Ecclesiastes, that there's a time and place for everything under the sun. That there's a time.
That's right. That's right.
And there is time for war. And in war, you can't be sissyish. You can't be, timid. Like, no, this is war. People are dying here. So you have to go in that route. But there's also a time for peace. And in peace, everybody can't be walking around like gorillas. Be peaceful. So I just wanted to kind of just to bring that back in with the issue of balance. And I think that's where the misconception of toxic masculinity and even toxic femininity comes in, is because what's happening is that we're focusing on the ultra and not making room for the possibility that, hey, certain situations call for ultra.
Right.
Proverbs 31 is a classic example of that. The ultra, feminine of feminine women, Proverbs 31 talks about. But what does Proverbs 31 also talks about? She's also very aggressive. Mm-hmm. She shows herself like this, and she says that she considers a field and buys it. It doesn't say that she got on her knees and groveled to her husband like, oh, can you think I can go and get this field? Like, no, I consider the field, and I go and buy it. I'm over here doing this. I'm making this happen. I'm making that happen. But at no point did her aggressiveness in her work ever be confused with her not being feminine. It's like, no, she's feminine when she needs to be feminine in relationship to her husband, but when she's out doing business, it's like, no, this is business. This has to go down, and I'm going to get that field, and I'm going to go do that. And so again, it's the balance.
Yeah, I like that. That's good.
But that's the end of my rant.
That's good.
I know the brother Isaiah was gonna bring out I think he said what is a double loaded question.
No, I was saying it was going to double back on what we were already talking about, but I'm glad that last bit of soliloquy was kind of thrown out there because it makes the question even more potent. Gotcha. So we mentioned a few different patriarchs, David, etc. Even you can throw Moses in there, who was described as the meekest man ever. You know what I mean? But at the same time, when he came off that daggone mountain and he seen them with their daggone calf, he grounded that thing down and made them eat it.
Made them drink it. Right.
Yeah. All of this. You know what I mean? But we also see, not towards the end of the situation, but moving towards the end of the situation, that same flare up kind of put him in a bad spot because, he acted a little, off, so to speak. So, not saying that was his ultimate position, but, so we can see kind of like a double-edged sword, even when you are meek, And even when you do have aspects of when to be masculine or when to be feminine, I think we all can agree that men and women alike have traits of masculinity and femininity. And it's kind of varies on the situation or varies on that particular conflict when to use it and how to use it. So my question was, in a sense, dealing with balance. We talked about balance a number of times on a number of these shows, but now I'm going to ask y'all a question where y'all get to express what that balance is. So
wait. Before you ask that question.
Yes, sir.
Let me know if I'm going into your question. Just tell me and shut up. But my question is, I wanted to say is, like, you brought out Moses, or Moshe. I love that you did, because if you think about it, just like Brother Zebulon was saying, he had those moments where he was meek as in the earth, like you said, but he has had the moments where he did what he did as far as when he came down. The instance I think you're talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, was with that rock instance. Oh. He got upset, right? And it wasn't the fact that of him being upset because the Most High was upset. It was the lack of wisdom. I want to put that wisdom in there too for the listeners and into with this conflict thing, because he told them, what did he say? We brought you this water. Mm-hmm. And that, I believe, Moray, correct me if I'm wrong, is the reason the Most High punished him and Aaron, because he didn't give the glory to them. To him. He was the one that provided them with that. It wasn't the man. So this kind of validates both of y'all point. Hey, we could still be firm. Hey, what is y'all doing? Y'all know who the one who gave us this?
Right.
It ain't him not being meek no more. Look, I'm being a man. I'm being stern. I'm y'all leader.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if I went into what you were saying, but I wanted to make sure, when we bring these points out, I know y'all do too, like to bring some little background. So for those that might check it out, that might not know.
Right. No, that was good. Thank you for adding that, because now the listeners who aren't, necessarily biblically based can kind of get a full spectrum of what was going on. But yes, that's exactly what I was leading into as far as the water situation with the smoke and the rock. So so we see where aspects of that masculinity can get you in trouble when not used correctly, or focusing on a conflict where you don't use that level of balance. So my question is going to be simply stated as this: how do we get to a point of balance, and what is that balance? So for instance, without necessarily mentioning if you can mention a situation or a conflict, what is that balance and how do we get there? If I'm posing a question correctly.
Good question. I mean, and from my understanding of it, and again, I guess I'm putting that disclaimer out because I'm not of the opinion that there's a monolithic, answer to that. Mm-hmm. I'm of the school of thought that it's kind of a case by case basis, because every scenario calls for a different response and a different, way to address it. So it's kind of up in the, it's kind of like the question of what you can and can't do on the shop bodies.
I have a question. Okay, let me. I'm sorry.
That is a big question.
Yes, Zebulon, I feel you.
Yeah,
I feel you.
And I know that's gonna go into a whole nother thing, but we'll put a pin in that. We'll put a pin in that. I love it. I would love to talk about that with y'all, for real.
That'd be a nice conversation too. But let me add a question, if I will.
Okay.
Instead of what is that balance? Let's switch that around to how, because it's a case by case situation. So how do we become that balance? So
okay.
So I'm first. I'll save mine for last. I'll let y'all go ahead because y'all gonna hit it.
Okay. Well, I mean, for me, one of the things that I learned, and obviously this was from just experience, so a lot of a lot of hitting and missing, probably more missing than hitting. But I learned that in any scenario, the first thing that has to cross your mind, and this comes through time, training oneself to, to think, to think slower, than you speak. To really, really slow down your thinking so that you can look, and not just think, but to look at all of the possible outcomes of an action. I think a lot of times when we deal with going again into conflict resolution, we go into these scenarios thinking and saying things with the expectation that a single outcome is going to happen. So if I'm having an argument, let's say with a woman, wife, or whatever have you, if I'm having an argument, in my mind, if I'm not thinking clearly, I'm like, okay, I'm going to argue, but the outcome of this is going to be, I'm right, she can shut the hell up, and we can get back to business. That's the that's the first thing, because and women do the same thing too. Women do like listen, I'm right,
God,
he's out of his mind, and I'm gonna argue him down until he can't argue no more. But if we sit back and say, okay, what is the end result of this? So for instance, if I'm in an argument, in a conflict situation, and the first thing that comes to my mind is, okay, I'm going to respond this way. The first thing I have to think after that thought is, okay, if I respond that way, how will they respond to that? And then it's like chess. You start looking at all these different move possibilities on the chessboard of, if they move this way, then okay, then I can move this way, or that way. But if I move this way, then they can also move this way, or that way, or that way. But then if I move this way, so you're constantly looking at all the possible moves and what will be the outcome of said move. So like even with chess, my chess teacher back in the day, years ago, taught me that you have to think not 2, 3, 4 moves ahead. People who think 1 or 2, 3, 4 moves ahead, they only play a good game and can possibly win. When you play chess, you have to see the end of the game. When you see the end of the game, you'll simply make your opponent move the way you want them to move for you to win. But the point is that you have to see the end of a matter, as Solomon would say. Let us consider the end of the matter. Not all of the things leading up, no, the end. If we understand the end, then we can go into the parts where we get to that end. And so in having arguments with people, you have to look at what your response is going to lead to. Is it going to lead to further discussion? Is it going to lead to anger? Is it going to lead to higher levels of argument to where personal things is thrown into, into the mix? Like the brother Isaiah said, you get into these long arguments and it becomes so emotionally riled up. Now she says, see, you're like, well, that's why you unemployed and you can't work. Like, really? And how do you come back from that? And that can cause a person bitterness, because now you're taking it on a personal. Now we're not even arguing. The conflict is no longer about the issue. The conflict now is our personal issue, our personal things. Right. Now I'm beginning to develop a hatred for you.
Yeah.
Because I see that we're not arguing about the issue. We're now attacking each other's character. We're attacking each other's person, whatever, especially when you know the inner workings of that person and they know the inner workings of what goes on in your whatever, and that can cause the end of said relationship or end of said friendship. And that's why the best thing to do in conflict resolution a lot of times is not even to speak, on behalf of yourself, but listen on behalf of the other person. And I think a lot of times in these conflict situations, and this is the reason why there's no balance, because everyone's going into the argument or into the conflict with the intent of winning. That's the intent. I'm going in to win. Whether it's a fight, whether we're playing chess, whatever, I'm not going in there to shuck and jive. Like as an adult, I have a Mike Tyson mentality. Like, listen, I can talk all soft outside the ring and that's all fine. When I'm in the ring, you got to die. Because we're both not going to come out of the ring winners. No, I'm coming out as the winner. And so when you go in with that, with that attitude, it creates a scenario where it's going to automatically be no balance because you're not even considering the possibility that the other person could be right. You're not even considering it. There's no consideration. You're going in like, listen, I don't even care. I'm winning. I know I'm right. Men do it and women do it. And not to sound sexist, but maybe women do it more. But
say what?
But
oh my God!
But this is what we do. I mean, we as whether men or women, we do this. Nobody goes into conflicts with the intent of saying, let's go in. I'm going to go in with the the idea that we'll both come out satisfied in a scenario. Nobody does that. I'm going in there to win, to prove my point. You're coming in to prove, to win and prove your point. And what ends up happening is this is the reason why problems linger after the argument. Because nothing was ever resolved. It was me bashing you, you're bashing me, and we done got all flared up emotionally or whatever like that. And then the argument ends and it was never resolved. So that argument will resurface and show its head again not too long after. This is what I mean by how I learned from my mother from a young age of sweeping things under the rug. And when we argue, that's ultimately what you're doing. You're actually arguing emotions and not arguing the intellect of the situation. So everything gets swept under the rug, and that's why these problems always resurface later on. After a while, you're like, why are we arguing over the same thing? We don't, like month after month, the same thing over and over. It's not because the problem keeps rising, it's because it was never resolved. And you can't resolve anything in that type of conflict of just arguing. The balance is, you know what? I feel that what I'm saying is right, but let me consider the possibility that you could be equally right. And maybe I'm only right from my perspective and how my vantage point is, and you're right from your vantage point. So maybe somewhere in between that, we can find a resolution to this. But how often do we go into arguments with that type of thinking?
That's why, man, look, that's why I love this platform. I think that, I don't know if how you all operate within those type of situations. Am I talking too low? Can you hear me? He can't hear me? How you can't hear me, man?
I can hear you.
See, that's Isaiah, man, because Isaiah got that mute going to where he want that soft voice. You know what I'm saying? That's why he can't hear me. Turn the receiving volume up for yourself. Output. I don't know. I'll mess with you. Can you hear me now? Okay, cool. I think that it all boils down to like what Morey Zebulon and Isaiah was saying earlier. And I know me and Tamar spoke on this past shows. We have to start from the beginning, man. A lot of the stuff that we talking about is people that have been in a relationship for a while and didn't start off with talking out these scenarios like before they even happen on how to operate when they get into these type of problems. Because at the point I'm at in my life, in the beginning I was like what Zebulon was talking about. But now it's like, okay, cool. I want to get the best outcome for both of us. I'll give you a perfect example. When I did that 17-page writ, remember Tamar, I was telling you about that?
Yeah.
I could have, a writ is a demand. summing it up for those that don't know, writing a writ for somebody that's you're demanding something that is should rightfully be yours. In that writ I wrote to the mother of my son, because I wasn't seeing my son for 5 months, I not only showed her the demand of what I was supposed to have, but I also, hey, this is affecting you too. I didn't have to do that.
Right.
Because I wanted us to come to some common thing that'll benefit both of us. So what I like to tell people, when you're dealing with a relationship, it's a business more than anything, in my opinion, with marriage. And when you think of businesses and you think of contracts, contracts are supposed to be for both parties. And before you get married, it's supposed to benefit both of you. So going back to what I was about to say, King Zebulon. Oh yeah, exploder right there. What Maury Zebulon was saying. When we come into this, the wisdom from all the negative stuff we went through and the failures that we went through, we come to realize, like, hey, wait a minute, I'm married to this person. It is a contract. So guess what? When I go into an argument or a quote unquote argument, I should be bringing points that can benefit both of us so that both of us can come off on top. Now, he gave you a great analogy. Normally, when you go into fights, the person is trying to win. That is facts. But since we together, we need to try to figure out a way. And it's hard. But the best way I think the answer will be is to put all this stuff in the beginning. For those of us that's already married, I don't know how to get y'all to the point that I'm talking about right now, because y'all been together for years.
Good, yeah. Oh, what happened just now? That was, okay. I thought he was talking. You done, Shamal?
Yeah, I'm done. I mute myself because I got my son with me. And
Okay. I was just like, what happened? Yeah.
I'm done talking. I just mute myself.
Yeah. I would agree. With all that, I definitely think that I love the idea, because I actually heard it on the song. It's this album that I bought like maybe a year or so ago, but it's I can't think of the name of it. But anyway, it's the first like hip hop album I ever bought that is like all about marriage. But there's like these. I love interludes, by the way. So I love when you have a music project out and they'll have like little interludes between them because it's a story, blah blah. But anyway.
Yeah, that's old school.
Yeah, well, I love it.
Okay. No. We're hey.
Yeah.
We're in agreement on that.
Yeah, I love it. But it was called Conflict Interlude. And it was a conversation between a married couple, and they were explaining the benefits of conflict. And the woman actually said that when you start to assassinate somebody's character, that's when you done gone too far. And I had never thought about that. So you just said it, Zebulon, so I made me think about that. I had never thought about that before. That is what we do in conflict, because we don't come with it. We don't come in a spirit of meekness or humility to even receive the fact that maybe we could be wrong. And I think once you turn 40, you should. I know with me, my mind is totally different than what it used to be. And I just think thank the Most High for space and age and time and experiences, because I think now I see things, I try to be more, like what you said, Zebulon, slowing down your thoughts. Now, I'm not there yet, but I will say that when conflicts do arise, I try to wait and say something. I'm not a controversial person anyway, you know what I'm saying? But I would hate to say something and bring something up that is not even an issue. So I spend a lot of time within myself. The way you know that something is wrong with me is if I'm quiet. So my response is not to be mad and then rah. It's like, be quiet for a minute, think about it. Am I wrong? Am I tripping? Did they do this? Am I tripping? But I think even in that, it is wise to come to the situation to hear as well. And I think that happens with time. But I do think that we don't even come to the idea to even come to conflict with the idea of learning. And I think that's what ultimately results in divorce, because now y'all stuck at this impasse. You can't really get beyond it or get past it, because y'all still stuck at something. Like you said, Zebulon, we was arguing. I had a legitimate reason to be mad, right? And I come to you, and vice versa, male or female, I come to you and try to express it. And so because you know me, now you point out what happened in the past with somebody else, or how my parents interacted with me, or how I interact with, you know what I'm saying? And that's a huge no-no. Also, I want to say too, that kind of goes back to the inbox that we had earlier about us, the idea of outside conflict happening, and we probably won't get a chance to go into that, I think, on this conversation. But if we can't resolve conflict amongst ourselves, then we are a house that is with cracks in the foundation. You know what I'm saying? Somebody can come through, somebody can ride past the house, do a drive-by slander, right? They can be like, she stank, and they can drive past, right? And because we're not in agreement about whether or not I smell, you know what I'm saying? We're not in agreement about whether or not I smell, then now it's like, and you smell. You know what I'm saying? So that just show you that we gotta be grounded. We have to be unified, whatever the relationship is, friendship, marriage, whatever.
Right.
It has to be some kind of foundational something so that things are not compounded as well. And I'm gonna say one last thing about I want to speak on the parent and child.
That was hilarious.
To speak on the parent and child situation, because I think that's important to be able to manage conflict with your children. So because I'm a widow and I don't have any men around me, this year I learned, going back to the femininity thing, right? So I had to raise up on my son, my oldest son, earlier this year. And I remember doing it, and I think it was sort of I had enough, so I kind of blacked out a little bit. But when I was talking to him, I was in his face, basically threatening his life, like, I'll kick your blankety blank. Right now, as a woman, that outside looking at that would be like, man, that's masculine, or you tripping, why you so angry? But I would say in situations like that where there is no balance in the household, you would have to see both male and female. So if I was a single father with kids, I would have to at some point kind of take on both roles. And I see that's another thing I think too, that we should just acknowledge, not judge, but acknowledge that in situations where there is an imbalance, one parent is going to have to be bipolar and have all these personalities in the back of their head to bring forward when it's necessary. Because I had to, and even now, like, we cool now, but even now I notice that I'll say, Yaakov, blah, 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 blah. And then he don't respond. But when I be like, I said, then he'll be like, okay. So there is there is balance that needs to happen, but it takes wisdom. And I think it's just it's what happens when we don't have these familiar structures in place. So we see all this confusion. I don't want to ramble, but I do want to throw that out when it comes to being a parent. Sometimes you might have to play both roles, but that should be okay. As long as you ain't like smacking kids upside the head, but as long as you trying to get the ultimate, seeing the end of the games, Evelyn, we have to sometimes come out of character in order to see that happen. So,
Absolutely.
Wow, that was dope. All of y'all had real dope answers. I like the fact of first slowing down your thoughts. That's the biggest thing. Self-reflection is big when dealing with conflict. Because like Brother Zed, what you said, earlier, as far as going into, and I'm reflecting as y'all all talking. I'm just reflecting on a whole bunch of past arguments where, I might have necessarily been wrong in thought, but just my actions of going about having them was real prideful and a whole bunch of qualities that I don't want to be. And sometimes you gotta have conversations like this to be like, oh, I was tripping. All for the sake of being correct.
Right.
And not for the sake of, as they say, gaining a brother or sister, or, finding a greater good for that nucleus. Because ideally, being puffed up, I thought my greater good or my ideal was what that nucleus needed. What that relationship needed. Hold on. Somebody want to be driving on slow.
That's a drive-by slander gonna come through.
That's how it starts off with a loud revving engine, huh? So, sitting here and reflecting on life as y'all talk, I'm like, dang, you know what I mean? But that's what this show is for. So I appreciate it. But yeah, self-reflection first. as something Brother Shema alluded to earlier, not acting on impulse. You know what I mean? Not being quick to respond and, you know, apply them listening skills. Because a lot of times, with a lot of cases with conflict, it don't even be necessarily a right or wrong thing. It's just a difference of opinion. And knocking out that and removing that aspect of communication by not listening and only offering verbal output instead of taking an input. You know what I mean? We lose track of ourselves sometimes, and then that causes for ground for you know, slander of character and those things that kind of creep in after that. Because once you lost the level of communication with a person, then it's all, well, you did this, you did that, X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Then everything is gone because nobody listening to each other now. It's just a whole bunch of, well, it's your fault. And that other person is like, well, no, it ain't my fault. It's your fault. You know what I mean? This is probably going to sound bad, and I'm probably going to I'm going to bear this comment that I'm about to make. But it's the same way we, as knowing Israel, treat our conditions and stipulations versus being in this world. I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna leave that there. And I'm gonna go back to my last thought. We you know, having that ability to kind of slow down, look at things, focus on what the conflict is, and finding a peaceful resolution or finding what balance is key. You guys all listed what I think are dope steps into becoming balanced. So I thank y'all for that little bit. I will also say this. Maybe I know we're gonna have a discussion later on, but I'm gonna throw in my pool for the next conversation. Continue on this wave of conflict, dealing with conflict coming from outside of that aspect of a relationship, whether it's a friendship or anything else. How, as Tamar said, what to do when them drive-by slanders get thrown at you.
It sounds like a part 2 to this show.
Yeah, I
is
think
that what we're talking about here?
I think so. But you know, I like the aspect of controlling your inner thoughts and inner feelings first, getting your emotions kind of unknotted, and then approaching whatever that conflict is for you and the other people involved, the other person involved, depending on what nature of the relationship we're speaking of. You know what I mean? So that was dope. I'm gonna end it off there. I just wanted to make sure I laid my claim for part 2 for this show.
Absolutely. And I just want to just say briefly that, especially when, you know, again with conflicts and things like, and I didn't learn this until like later in life, like, you know, late 30s, going into my, you know, early 40s, that it began to like really, I mean, I kind of knew it before that, but knowing something and doing it is two different things. But what I realized in a argument or in a conflict, you can be right and don't necessarily have to prove it to that person. Like me being right is not dependent on whether or not you accept it. I mean, think about it. We do this all the time on Facebook. We'll put up a post, you know, stating some type of position, doctrine, or whatever like that. We'll come without precepts, whatever like that. We'll drop them scripts in there, whatever the case. Now you're reading the text. You know it says what it says. It's clear as day. And somebody comes on the post and says, I don't agree. I don't agree with that. Now, regardless of what transpires after that, you might still, at the end, you might be like, well, in your mind, like, yeah, but it's clear. It says exactly what it says. It's not like it's not like I'm reading into it. It says, it's like a person said, listen, this script says, you know what I'm saying, thou shalt not murder. Now somebody comes on and says, well, I disagree with that. I think you're reading into it. Well, it says thou shalt not murder. Now, unless the definition of murder has changed in the past 5 minutes, I think it's, but right then, you don't even have to go any further with the argument. You can simply let that person voice what it is that they feel, because at that point, what they feel doesn't change what you know. So
say that again, boy.
So I say that now, of course, going back into like issues of relationship conflict, resolution of relationships, we can have a disagreement, but our disagreement doesn't lead to me being wrong, and it doesn't lead to you being wrong. It just simply means we don't agree. Now, of course, I say that with the caveat that doesn't always apply with major issues, like, relationship breaking issues. But 9 times out of 10, most of what we argue about, 95% of the time that that you get into an argument with a spouse or whatever, it's really not about relationship ending scenarios. It's usually something that can be worked out with no further issues going forward. It's not like, we're not talking about you committed adultery. No, I didn't commit adultery. I was with her, but it's not one of those scenarios.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, hey, we have our disagreement, whatever like that, and your being right doesn't negate my perspective on it. Okay, you're right, but I still see or view the situation the way it is. And once we understand that the other person is, it is permissible for that person to still feel what they feel. And I think a lot of times in these conflicts, we try to shut down what people feel. Like, whatever, I try to prevent you from feeling what you're feeling, because I think that my rational, the rational part of the argument is more important. It's like, it's important, but it's not, it doesn't negate the legitimacy of how you feel in a situation.
Yeah, I would definitely. I think that's good to make that to distinguish between the two. I think that is where you get to learn, continually learn, and look at a conflict as a jumping off point, or disagreements as a jumping off point to enhancing the relationship. So I think that's good to be able to to know what is a deal breaker and what's just I don't agree with you. But that takes maturity. I think we said it before. A lot of these concepts we're talking about are made with somebody who is trying to be an adult, like a mature individual. But if you are already married and this is the standpoint of what's going on in your relationship, it's gonna take a lot. But we have like less than 5 minutes left, and I wanted to just do some closing comments. So you want to say some closing comments first, Jamal?
Yeah, please. I gotta head on now. I'm sorry, y'all.
Yeah.
I appreciate both y'all. Not both y'all, all 3 y'all. Sorry, tweaking. Thinking my son and daughter right now. Appreciate all 3 y'all, man. Just like Isaiah was saying, like, you could sit back and you could listen to multiple ideas and perspectives that's conducive in helping us get where we need to be. I think that's important. I think it's always better to have multiple people that are on the same page as far as the can go. And that's what we all doing. Right. I think that the closing statement I want to close out with is, for those that are not in a relationship, looking to be in one, I think you should take heed to what Chief Zebulon was speaking on, Isaiah was speaking on, in regards to how it's like a competition mostly. That's what was kind of I got out of them too when they was speaking earlier. It's a competition with us in general. When you're in a relationship, I think that if we can go to the beginning, not the beginning, but start from the beginning and kind of like use life examples as opportunities to bring up conversations that you might not have dealt with. Like I said, if you're watching TV with your significant other, and you see something that y'all ain't never went through, because ain't nothing new under the sun. something is going to happen that you might be similar to what what they're dealing with. Ask questions. Hey, how you think you're responding to that? And be honest with me. Be blunt. Don't just sugarcoat it because I'm your bae and you my bae. No, let me know what you think you would do, and then let's kind of address it here, so that when we get there, and then when we put that stuff in the forefront, now we can set forth some type of expectation, whether from the male version perspective and the female. I mean, it's all about growing. So and fixing nipping these conflicts in the bud. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm ranting right now, mind kind of everywhere, but the basis of this show is we're trying to talk about these conflicts, but how can we subdue them? How can we put them at the halt or move them to the side? The best way is getting in front of it. Like he said when he brought out the scripture, seeing the matter in the beginning. This me paraphrasing it, before it even happens. You know what I'm saying? See it before it happens. The thing that happens, the reason we fail is because we do not see it before it happened. We let it happen, and right when it's too late. And that's all I got, y'all.
Yeah, indeed. Yep. So we're gonna get ready to close out. I guess we'll be revisiting this topic again next week, most high willing, next Saturday, same time, 12 Central, 1 p.m. Eastern, Love Language, the Roundtable, and it'll be part 2 of managing conflict. But we'll be looking at the outside influences and how they could cause a bunch of static in relationships. So anyway, grace, peace, everybody. We love y'all, and until next time, peace.
Yeah.
Peace.